Good evening, everybody. My name is Tim Markle. I'm director of the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs out of the Waisman Center. We cover 14 counties in southern and southwest Wisconsin, including the fantastic county of Rock. And so tonight we are partnering with the School District of Janesville. We have a number of teachers and educators from the School District of Janesville on tonight. This would not be possible without their partnership, and they are the reason that we are doing this. We also recognize that we open this up to people from throughout the southern region and also the state of Wisconsin. And so we will do our best to answer those questions. But I know tonight we have two fantastic rehabilitation counselors joining us from the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation from Rock County. And so we have Deb Remmel and Kelsey Harrington are joining us tonight to talk about ready to work, finding, keeping integrated employment, and helping us to make that line between DVR and some of the supportive agencies as well that we will come into contact with. So hey, let's learn about employment. Deb and Kelsey, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, Kelsey, you're going to run the PowerPoint, correct? All right,
Yep.
Perfect. So tonight, the learning objectives and targets that we want to hit is understanding DVR's referral and application process, kind of learning about how our DVR's eligibility and criteria work, the discussion of DVR's transition services for students, sharing tools and best practices for success for student transition, and addressing any questions you might have in that whole process. So those are kind of our learning objectives. Regarding DVR in itself, we are obviously, Division of Voc Rehab is a state agency within the Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development that develops occupational talent for individuals with disabilities. When it looks at our funding sources, 78.7% of our funding comes from the federal government, and then we have the 21.3% state match. Our mission is obviously to assist individuals with disabilities in obtaining, maintaining, and improving employment. So those are kind of the main objectives. Kelsey, I'll turn over for you.
Yeah, so in order to get started with DVR, we go through, or we have our consumers go through a referral and application process. What this looks like for high school, or what we call our transition students, is we always encourage our high school students with a disability to apply at least 2 years before completing high school. We do have some documentation that is filled out for those who are under 18 or those who are over 18 and not their own guardians. That individual's legal guardian would sign all of their documents. If they are over 18 and their own guardian, then they could sign their own documents themselves. Our referral or our applications can be done online by mail if you have a paper version of our application, or in person. A lot of times too with our schools and our students, sometimes the schools will also help them fill out applications and referrals and get them to us as well.
One thing with the part with the age frame, we do like them 2 years prior to, but we can take individuals as low as 14. There is some students that are out there that really want to get a job and get started. We have helped them. It is a little bit more difficult just because of the businesses that may or may not be able to hire at that age frame. But we can sure start working with them at the age of 14. So just wanted to put that tidbit out there. But our preference is obviously 2 years prior, but we have worked with individuals as young as 14 because that is our area of, and then it can go on up as 100 and whatever. So, all right, go ahead.
Perfect. Thanks, Deb.
Well, Deb, I'm just thinking that by 100 or whatever, probably all of us will be experiencing some sort of disability or not if we are living to be 100. So we will all be eligible for DVR services at 100. So thank you for pointing that out to us.
So in talking about who is eligible for DVR, to be eligible for DVR services, you must have a documented medical or psychological disability that presents a barrier to employment and requires services from DVR. DVR staff can work with applicants to gather needed written documentation and informational releases for medical providers or who can provide that diagnosis. We'll schedule a meeting to discuss the applicant's disability and needs and how DVR can best assist them in finding employment. We can also use existing information to the greatest extent possible. So if in the past at a school you've had an IEP or maybe a functional screen, previous medical records, that can all be used as documentation as well. And if needed, if we need further documentation, we can always provide or gain additional assessments if needed.
Yeah, neuropsychs are great as well. So if individual has a neuropsych testing or has testing within the school that was done by a psychologist, etc., and that can be utilized. So there is different ways within the school, but also outside of the school and or medical records from therapist, psychiatrist, etc., doctor.
Yep, exactly. So then when we're able to gather that information, we are able to form what is called an order of selection. So an OOS, or an order of selection, evaluates how a person's disability affects 7 different areas that relate to work. So we relate that person's disability and how it may affect the areas of mobility, communication, self-care, self-direction, interpersonal skills and acceptance, work tolerance, and work skills. And then based on those 7 different areas, we'll categorize them into category 1, 2, or 3, 1 being most severe to least severe. And as required by federal law, DVR serves those with the most serious limitations due to disability first. Deb, you want to take this part away?
Yeah. So what does really transition look like? Overall, we're looking at different areas that will be how we can help them to best function after they transition out of high school. So is that going into the 18 to 21 program that the school has, and then working alongside them, maybe with work experiences, getting them jobs within school, outside of the school while they're still in school? Is that preparing them to go on to college? It really is going to depend on what that student level of functioning is, what their desires are, and how those match up, and how we can kind of move forward from there. So those are kind of some of the key areas that we look at. So obviously, key practices with transition, we would invite DVR to we would be invited as DVR people to IEPs, or allow DVR to provide technical assistance for students with disabilities who are not maybe DVR consumers, but maybe are considering to apply for services. So if you are not familiar, all of us counselors are assigned to different schools. For instance, my assignments are Parker and Tagos, and I have Parkview Orfordville, and I also have Edgerton. And so every one of our counselors are assigned to specific schools and are spending time within the schools helping the students that we already have on our caseload, and then also helping bring on additional students within the school districts that have disabilities, so that we can help them to be able to best serve them and what it is that we can help them move on to for transition, whether that's going to be, like I said, a job currently while they're in school, whether that's going to be looking at college life after, or is it going to be a job after school. So we're preparing those students, and we use a variety of services so that we can utilize through that. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about that further as we go forward. So offering employment consultation through DVR, which can be provided for any student with a disability, and then scheduling and attending regular meetings within the high school. As I have said, we are all assigned to different schools, and we are all in our schools at least a couple times a month, and more when we are invited to the IEPs, which is really a pertinent thing. So if we have students that have IEPs, is being invited to them, even to if they maybe are not with our services, we can tell them about our services and their parent or their guardian. Or if they are already a part of our services, it's just continuing to be the second part of the transition piece with the school. Other key things is scheduling, obviously meetings with DVR, teachers, other school staff at the start of the school year, which as we've discussed, we're all already kind of in full force and into our schools. Attending parent-teacher conferences can be another area that we can, transition fairs, open houses, any similar events to like what we're doing now. So we also, participate in the CCOT events, and there's just a variety of events depending upon what schools we're already assigned to on what they may want us to participate in. I will pass it off to Kelsey.
Sure. So we do coordinated transition services with schools and other partner agencies. So something that we wanted to discuss tonight too was that we work with other agencies also in the community. Some of you might know that we also work with job development agencies specifically. So while you might be assigned to a DVR counselor to help you with employment services and different things, you're also going to be working with a job developer from another agency as well. That'll be a little bit more hands-on in regards to like applying to jobs, interviewing, that kind of thing. So we not only have DVR, we also work with other agencies as well. Some other things that we also work with is care teams. So if any of you have any like long-term support providers, anything like that, therapists, different people like that in the community as part of a care team, that's something else that we might work with as well.
Can I add a little bit to that? So
yes,
we do coordinate some services, obviously, with the CCS services with Rock County or CPS services with Rock County. Any of the long-term agencies, which is IRIS or Inclusa or My Choice. And then obviously lots of different vendors that we work with, like CISA, Can Do, CSW, which is Community Solutions, and Aptiv, and a variety of other different things, such as interpreters and different agencies as well. So.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the tools that we provide or some of the services we provide in working with those other agencies as well is job exploration counseling, work-based learning experiences where you can get hands-on experience in a specific job, counseling on comprehensive transition or post-secondary education. So if you're thinking about going on to maybe a college or technical college or something post-high school, it's something we can talk about as well. We also do work-based readiness training to develop social and independent living skills, and then instruction on self-advocacy as well. Deborah, did you want to add something?
Tim, do we have any questions in the hopper that we need to answer?
Thank you so much for checking in. We've dealt with a couple of technical issues in the chat, and but nothing so far.
Okay.
Questions aren't a thing, but I just thank you guys. I mean, this is just, I find this information so important, that the different things that DVR can help with students with disabilities and employment. And it's like, oh my gosh, I need you guys on speed dial. I would feel that way if I felt like I was a teacher or something. It's just like, oh my gosh, I need to speed dial these people because you seem to have something that can help.
One of the other things, if we just go back a minute, Kelsey, to some of the other services that we can provide. So for instance, one of the things, if somebody is maybe going on to post-secondary education and maybe is in need of extra tutoring, or they're maybe in need of help with computer software to help them, because maybe that's the stuff that they've used in high school. Maybe they're using JAWS, or maybe they're using Grammarly or a Reader, or any of those types of services and programs. Those are things that we may be able to help them and purchase them as a one-time deal. The other thing is like, so maybe there's an individual who is really wanting to get their driver's license, but maybe they have some physical limitations that isn't going to allow them to drive in the normal car. So we may be able to purchase a service to help them learn through a special adaptive car, etc. So there's lots of different avenues. It's based on each. So our program is really designed per client and what the needs of the client is. And so this is just a short list of what we can do. And everything, you know, kind of falls into play as we move through each of the steps with each of the clientele.
Perfect. So DVR employment planning and consultation services for transition services, what are they? Deb, we kind of pretty much went over this, or is there anything you wanted to add in this section?
No, I think we're pretty good there. I think we've said as much as we might need to at this point.
Right. So we'll keep moving on to what is an IPE, and this is really going to be one of the first steps that we take in working with an individual. So an IPE is an individualized plan for employment. Try not to confuse it with an IEP, as some students might have in school, which is an individualized education program. This plan is specifically a plan for employment. So what is our employment goal? What are we working towards? This is where we'll kind of talk about different services that might be needed in order to reach that employment goal. So this is something that we develop in order to kind of guide us in our employment search. So DVR really helps consumers develop a plan to find a job, maybe keep a job that they already have, or get a better job than what they currently have.
And when we talk about keep a job, maybe they're having a struggle in that job, and maybe they need some job coaching. So we can hire a vendor to come in and help them maybe learn the tasks that they're struggling with, and help them follow through with that and make sure they're working well at that specific area that they were struggling in. And then we'd back out of it. All of our services are short-term, they're not long-term. Obviously, if an individual is going to need long-term, we're looking at, are they with CLTS currently? Are they going to transition into long-term services through the ADRC and have adult services and have that funding source attached? Because if they are an individual with supported employment, they're going to need a funding source attached in the long run to transition the long-term support services to, so the follow along job coaching or the follow along that needs to be done.
Correct. So DVR is really all about planning. So quote by Yogi Berra, if you don't know where you are going, you'll end up someplace else. So again, we definitely develop that plan so that we know where we're striving to go. Deb, do you want to take it away from here?
Yep. Comparable benefits. Everybody talks, what is comparable benefits? So for instance, if an individual is looking for we need to look at all the different sources and maybe even do cost sharing between agencies. So sometimes, you know, for instance, if you're familiar with FSET or W-2 or some of the other programs that may be affiliated with the Department of Workforce Development, sometimes they are sharing costs. So maybe we're paying the fees for an individual to go to school, but they're paying other costs, maybe some transportation stuff, or maybe they're buying the clothes or the things that they need maybe for their lab or any of those other types of things. So we always look at the comparable benefits. Is there financial aid? So if an individual goes to school with us, and we are a part of that, every individual has to fill out what's called financial aid. They have to have a FAFSA filled out, and they have to be in a financial aid eligible program for us to be a possibility of funding that. When we look at that, that goes off obviously to the federal government, and it's based on income of them, their family, parent, guardian, whoever maybe have claimed them, especially if they are young and just coming out of high school. So it dictates to us and the school how much money they have in grants, scholarships, loans. And based on that, if there is what is called an unmet need, there could be a source of income from us to help them with some schooling. The max that they can get is $5,000 in a year, $2,500 in a semester. But again, we've seen it from 0 to 100 to 200 to 2,500 a semester. It's really based on parents' income and the student as well. And then if there's grants and scholarships that are outweighing that, then there wouldn't be an unmet need. And then obviously transit services, we look at what's comparable. If they're needing help with transportation, is there a long-term funding source that's helping them out and could pick up some of the transportation? Can we look at, do they need a van service? Is it that they can take the city bus and be trained how to take the city bus? We will always help with some of those costs up front, and then it transfers to them, especially after they get a job. And then again, with libraries and computer labs, is there a computer lab available, and do they have the software, the situation and programs that an individual would need in order to be successful?
Yeah,
And so those are kind of.
I've got
Yes.
a question for you.
Sure,
I'm just
sure.
thinking about, looking at all those comparable benefits and everything. How much help are you able to provide the consumer in trying to track down all that? Because that just seems like a lot of information that may be not readily available without asking the right questions of like the libraries. How much help is DVR able to assist in trying to find the answers to those questions?
We provide as much help as we can, is specifically if we know who they're connected to or not connected to, or if we connect them with, a specific agency, like if they're working with the ADRC, or if they're working with IRIS, or they're working with the Ready CLTS. And so usually there's joint meetings that come together regarding that to kind of hash out some of those services, or obviously we're using ROI so that we can speak with these agencies up front and making sure of what is needed or not needed, what's already covered or not covered. Is there places that they could possibly get some of this comparable benefits? And some of that actually, sometimes people will come to us wanting a psych eval or different things, but we have to actually check if their insurance company can do that first. So if we really look at all avenues to make sure that if there is a comparable benefit first, that isn't a DVR, then we utilize that first. Or if it's if we need to cost share, as we talked about between agencies.
Thank you.
Sure. So the end goal, integrated employment. Most integrated settings is now defined as a setting that enables an individual to interact with a persons without disabilities to the fullest extent possible. Again, there is going to be sites that have people with disabilities, but it's also sites, what this is talking about is integrated, where it is people with not disabilities as well. So we're not looking at sheltered workshops. We're looking at specifically community employment. What's a successful closure look like? Once an individual has maintained employment for a minimum of 90 days, DVR will close the file successful. For consumers that are in supported or customized employment, this 90-day time frame begins following the day of transition to long-term support. So we may need to stabilize somebody in a job longer than the first 90 days. So maybe it's 6 months. And then once we do transfer them to the long-term support, we follow them again for the next 90 days. We aren't funding that. The long-term care service is funding it, but we are still following them to just make sure that things continue to go well. Closures may allow others to come off wait lists. As we talked about, category 1, 2, and 3. Category 1 and 2 currently have no wait list, and we have been pulling off category 3s, which has been unheard of for many, many years, but we are pulling them just because we have been down in referrals since COVID had hit. So DVR continues to also kind of offer some post-employment services if needed, but usually we have them just reapply for a service if there is a need for more coaching, etc. I mean, if they're just checking in saying, oh, can you remind me of who I had my benefits analysis with, because, oh, I got a raise and I just need to make sure that I'm not going to go over my wages, that I'll still be able to keep my benefits. So that are kind of some of the similar things, or if they're just checking in for something minor and specific that doesn't need lots of post-secondary or post-employment service. And then obviously consumers can reapply services at any time. We have people do that on a regular basis. We see people come and go because either A, they successfully closed the case, and maybe then they lost their job 6 months or a year later and they need help again. Or maybe they closed their case or it was closed because of no contact, or the fact that maybe they weren't doing what was needed of the program at the time, and then they reapply again. Or maybe they were hospitalized or sick or something of the nature, and their case got closed. So it's a revolving door with DVR services. Anybody can reapply at any time. And so with that being said, does anybody have any specific questions?
Please feel free to put questions in the chat. I will also do my best to open up my gallery view here. So if you would happen to suddenly unmute, I'm going to anticipate that you have a question to ask. Or again, you can use the chat feature as well. But this is a good chance to ask if you've ever wondered if there's any part of the DVR that is a mystery to you, that you wonder how it works. This would be a great time to ask, or when you should contact or how to contact a vocational rehabilitation counselor specifically for your area. Again, this is a good time to ask those questions.
All of the counselors should have provided to the main contact the application process and ROI that goes with providing DVR services, so that they can provide that to the teachers. If you haven't gotten that from your assigned, obviously, school or teacher, I know with Parker, it's Shana. And so she has that. And Kelsey, which school do you have?
I have Janesville Craig and Wisconsin School of the Blind.
Okay. So any of the main contacts have the information. It's also on the website that you can just apply, or you can contact us directly and we will send you or send the family an application directly.
Yep. And here is our contact information as well. If you want to contact either Deborah or myself, our phone numbers as well as email addresses are listed, and you are welcome to reach out either way.
We do have a question. Does DVR help consumers with obtaining a driver's license?
It's a case-by-case basis. So it could, depending upon if it's disability related. And when that goes down a long rabbit hole, people will say, so I'll explain the easiest way I can. So an individual who maybe is in a wheelchair and or has a very specific disability that's going to need specialized training through a specialized vendor who has a specialized vehicle to help with that training, yes. If it is for other specific reasons, it's a case-by-case basis on if that disability would fit within that. It's not just, I don't want to pay the $450, meaning being a parent, or that maybe that they can't afford that. It really has to be for a specific reason why we would do that, and it has to be disability related. But again, it's not just physical disability, it can be other areas. I just wanted, that was like the easiest way to explain it.
And would they, if let's say an educator had a question about that for one of their students, would they contact, again, the main contact at their school to get in touch with the DVR counselor assigned to their school to talk about that as it is case-by-case basis?
Yes. And the actual consumer and or family member can contact that individual and discuss that when they are meeting with them and developing the IPE and or revising IPE, because it can always be revised if needed to add services or change services.
So I'm going to ask you a question as a consumer of DVR. My son is currently a consumer, and so he went through process and he went through the testing and it was fine. And then he had to choose an agency to work with. And that I don't think was fully explained to him in his meeting. And he's not in Rock County, so it's none of you guys. Okay,
Sure.
You guys are awesome. I know this would never happen in Rock County. But he was confused that he then didn't have a DVR counselor working with him with the job, that there was then that agency. Can you just help explain that connection, that role between DVR and then those agencies that they get assigned?
So actually, anytime he is open in a case, his file is open, he will always have a DVR counselor that he will be working with during that time period as well. If he is getting a job, or depend, if it is a job that we're talking about, then he would have a selection of vendors. He has provided a list of vendors. We are not able to say, yep, you should go with CISA, or you should go with Can Do, or you should go with Aptive, or you should go with Community Solution. They can ask us questions. We have to answer them, like, who do you have the most success with, or different things like that. People can ask us those questions. They can take the list. We advise them, take the list, call the individuals, the vendors, and specifically ask the questions you might want to know of. Again, that really depends if they want to do that or if they just eeny, miny, miny, mo and select one. We get a lot of that. But it really, they have the opportunity to select who they want to select. We are just there to provide guidance and answer the questions that they have. We cannot, we are directed not to say you go this one or that one. They can ask us questions that may point them in a different direction, but we cannot tell them to frankly go with somebody.
Do you have any questions that you say, well, this might be a good question to ask that agency? Or is it really that individualized that there's no real
Well, it could be that you ask, like, what's their success rate? How often are people utilizing this agency? Do they, depending upon the job that an individual is wanting, you might want to ask the question is, have you ever worked with an individual with such and such a disability looking for this type of job or in this type of field? So you can gear the questions however you want towards the counselor, but you can also gear it towards any of the vendors. And I welcome those questions all the time. And, you know, some of the vendors will get calls and answer them, and some of them will not. But then they may lose the business by not answering, you know, so. I don't know, Kelsey, any other thing to add to that?
No, I think you covered a lot of it, and like we said, it is kind of consumer based, and any inquiries that they might have, or there's no questions that they hopefully won't answer, or help them decide. Yeah.
Any other questions out there? I am not seeing any unmuting going on, and I do not have anything in the chat at this time. So any closing thoughts, Deborah or Kelsey?
If an individual has a disability, please let them know about DVR, because there is a lot of opportunity within our services to help these individuals, whether it's to get a job, keep a job, get a better job. And that is our motto, and there is funds out there and services that the average human being does not get, but people with disabilities get by coming to our services.
Mm-hmm.
So I highly recommend at least sending them our direction, and at least us giving a chance to talk to them and tell them further about our services. Because there's a lot of people that don't know about it.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard about you, or we hear it all.
And I also want to highlight the fact that, go back to what you said, is that you are very willing to attend those IEP meetings and work with the school to develop that plan for employment. Is the schools and the student don't have to do that alone. As you guys are there to help. So I like that. Is there a way for you to drop off business cards so they can give them to parents at IEP meetings? Do the school contacts have your contact information, like business cards or contact information?
Well, we all are just getting new business cards because we just moved into our new building. I have mine and can drop a bunch to Shayna or wherever it needs to be dropped off to. And I know that Kelsey, did you get yours yet?
I did, and I will do the same. I know that I believe Shayna already has some of my ones that I just made up. In the process of getting ours, I just kind of made some on printout sheets of paper. So I know that Shayna has some of mine for my students as well. So can definitely pass those out, but I will be sure to drop some of mine with her, my actual business cards soon.
Yes, and if any of you aren't familiar, the Job Center, obviously, that used to be at 1900 Center Avenue is no longer. It's now 1717 Center Avenue. It's the beautiful old Pick and Save that has changed into quite a beautiful building. So if you're ever there, absolutely check it out. I think I seen something in a chat with 504s.
Yeah, well, with students
absolutely.
With
We do take people with 504s, mental health. We have it all. We have people that are strictly mental health. We have individuals with 504s, other impairments that might be. So if there is a documented disability by a physician or a therapist, etc., that qualifies them for services. If we go back to the beginning of services, Kelsey, I'm not certain if we really touched that. I'll go through that one fit. So once we get the application in, that will go off to our SVRI team, which is in Stout, Wisconsin. It's up in Menominee, Wisconsin. It's UW Stout, and they do all of our eligibilities. They send it. Once they get that, they have 60 days to get that complete. It's probably taken an average of 30 days unless they're having a struggle getting the information and documentation of disability. So when you do provide anybody, if you send us an application that is completed, send an ROI with it for the school district of Janesville, but also send the IEP. All of that helps things to move along quicker. If there is specific things with like 504s, we may need documentation of disability through a psychiatrist or a counselor. So if there is already that in paper, on paper, send that along. Any of those, or a neuropsych, any of that that you have that can be sent with, that helps eligibility process go faster. The second piece of the eligibility process is, you know, within 5 to 10 days of us getting the application in the system, the parent or guardian is going to get a telephone call. And that's where they're going to do the original order of selection stuff, where they will talk about mobility, communication, self-care, self-direction, interpersonal skills, self-acceptance, the work tolerance, and the work skills, and how their disability affects them and why they're going to need our services. And then they talk a little bit about other things. They ask other questions. But once that is taken care of, they have, like I said, 60 days to get that eligibility. It comes back to DVR, and it's assigned to the person who has the school district, that particular school district, or just if it's just a regular consumer, that person gets reassigned to whoever's next on the order between counselors. And then we have 90 days to develop the plan. Several of us are very rapid engagers, and we try to get things moving as quick as possible, as fast as we can get meetings set up and get services moving is most of our mottos. Because we want to get students going. We want to get people who are in our services getting moving and exactly on what it is that they want to do through DVR. Is there anything else, Tim, that came through?
Nothing else came through. I just keep spamming people in the chat with the link to the feedback form so we can get other ideas about what we may want to cover on Transition Talks Tuesdays, as well as the next upcoming Transition Talk Tuesday, which will be October 26th.
Okay.
Any final questions or comments?
I'm good. I think I've covered what I think is most
Fantastic.
pertinent.
Yep, I think we're all good.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for showing up and for helping us figure out how the heck and why we should connect with DVR. I appreciate your time. Appreciate everybody showing up tonight. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.